This is a big moment for me. I'm finally on Rock Talk with Greg Godovitz. It's a great series. I've been watching all the great interviews. But tonight this is very special for us, and Doug Inglis' brothers are all here. And we've been throwing that term around a lot lately, and I think confusing some people. But I'm Rob Tyler, and Doug was a dear friend of ours and of our family, and we're here tonight, and Greg was gracious enough to actually dedicate this show to Doug. And I'm on here to ask some questions. So we're going to have some fun, as Doug would want it. We're going to talk about music. We're going to talk about Gotto and a bunch of stuff. So with that said, I want to introduce who's on the dais tonight, as we say. And to my immediate right is Marty. Now, this gets a little complicated. Marty's my brother. And Marty was also a very, very good friend of Doug's. And Marty was the first drummer in Gotto before Doug, and we'll get into that a little later. To his immediate right, maybe you've heard of him. This is our Elvis. This is Greg Godovitz, and worked with Doug for 45 years plus.
Plus actually, yeah.
And very interesting fella, and another brother of mine, far right, is Lorne Wheaton. And Lorne has worked with everybody, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But Lorne worked with Doug, and worked with Marty, and worked with Gotto. And I believe it was your first job in the industry, kind of your first real job, and we'll get into that as well. So thanks everyone for being here, and thanks everyone for tuning in to this very special episode of Rock Talk.
Nice to be here.
That's right. It is great. You know, I keep looking at you and thinking I'm the host, but you're the host, and like I'm over here, I'm the guest.
Well,
this is very confusing.
I'm just doing the intro because Greg said I could.
No, I'm glad that you're here. So fire away, kid.
Well, thanks so much. Again, thank you so much I'm really honored on many levels, because I've been a huge fan, and we're all like family. But anyways, I do have some questions, and I really tried to come up with some things that I thought Gotto fans and Doug fans would want to know. So maybe we'll start at the very beginning. Why not? Because I know that Greg was putting the band together in 74, 75. And maybe talk about the first lineup quickly before we get into how Doug joined before the first album.
Okay, well, first of all, Marty and I went to high school together.
Yeah.
So we did a lot of playing at W.A. Porter in Scarborough.
Right.
And I seem to recall we did Hey Jude there one year
with the orchestra.
With the orchestra, yeah, and everybody singing Na Na Na. And then I went down and quit after that, by the way. So I've been with Flood. When I left school, I got into Flood in 68 or 69. And it was, you know, we had a great time playing in that band. But the thing is that I was writing songs, and Brian and Ed Pilling, God bless both of them, Brian's another one left us too early. They really had the concession for writing the songs. And a lot of the songs that ended up as Gotto classics, I'd written during the Flood era.
Wow.
Chantel, Cock On,
Right.
a bunch of them. So I realized that the writing was on the wall, and the only thing I could do was put a new band together. So Marty and I had talked about, you know, let's find a guitar player. And I went one night to the Nob Hill Hotel, and Brutus was playing there with Wally's Wall and Gino Scarpelli. And I saw Gino sitting in the corner, and he was surrounded by chicks. And Wally said to me, why don't you ask him if he wants to join the band, because he's not happy. And I looked over and saw him with all those girls, and I went, yeah, he'll do nicely.
He's the guy.
And so that was it. It was the three of us at first. We went out and we rehearsed at a place way in the west. I don't know why it was way in the west, and none of us could drive then. It took me like 5 buses to get to it.
I remember.
And in this, you know, place where, well, actually it's sort of funny because they were, in one part of the building, they were building telescopes for observatories.
Yeah.
Right.
And all these guys in white coats. And then in the other part was maniacs like us making noise in all these cubicles.
I remember that.
You know?
Yeah.
They had like Doberman Pincer guard dogs in there. It was a really strange place.
Yeah.
We only had 15 songs when we started.
That's right.
And we started at a place outside of town, Duffy's Tavern in Hamilton.
In Hamilton. No drum solos.
That's right. Lucky comes up, the big guy, and he says, my name is Lucky. I am the guy who works here.
Security.
You'll do what I tell you. So I'm telling you this. You do 4 sets tonight. You get 15 minutes off and no drum solos. So we go on stage, and I looked at Marty, and I said, well, you know what to do, Marty. And Marty played a 10-minute drum solo. And then when it stopped, I said, well, now that we know who's really in charge here.
And let me just interlude. When Greg says 15 songs, that's 15 original songs.
Right.
Actually, in those days, not really.
Were
We did
there some
by the
covers?
Move. I remember we did.
We did Do Ya before
Yeah.
ELO had covered it.
Okay.
That's right.
But we never told anybody that they were cover songs.
No.
So we did Waiting for the Bus. You know,
ZZ Top. Yeah.
yeah, and we did some English songs that I'd learned in the Flood days, like "Standing in the Road" by Blackfoot Sue. Nobody
Yeah.
knows that band. "The Eagle Flies on Friday" by Elmer Gantry's Velvet Opera, if memory serves.
And original songs.
And yeah, then we drive me crazy. We had, but because we had 4 sets to do, by the time we were in the second set, we were already repeating the first set.
Yeah.
So some of these songs got played 4 or 5 times in the course of a night. And then I thought, we better really start writing songs. And then Marty started, and he will tell you about it.
Right. So Marty, you were in the band at that time.
I was, like Greg said, we went to high school together, and I guess when it was time for him to put a band together, I was his first call because, we were buddies. And we used to jam a lot together. There was a lot of that going on back then. In Scarborough, where we both grew up, it was there wasn't a lot to do. So a lot of bands came from there. A lot of music came from Scarborough during that era. And it was great. So
Right. So when that lineup started to come together with Marty and Greg and Gino, Lorne, you came into the fold right around that time and started to pull all that together.
It was pretty quick because I was mixing front of house
Yeah.
as well as doing everything, of
Yeah,
course,
you're
which everybody did back in those
that's
days.
right, getting the beers,
And
everything.
you drove the whatever rental truck you had. You set up the back line, which is the band gear.
Yeah.
My gig after that was mixing the front of house.
I didn't know
I
that.
had a little. I think it was a little 12-channel image board.
If.
I think that. Well,
Sheer
actually,
luxury.
I'm not sure what the first one was. I ended up with this 12-channel because Bruce Duncan, his PA company,
Right.
Audience Audio,
Audience.
was the company. And I'm pretty sure we were using Audience Audio when I started with you guys.
Yeah, Bruce's stuff.
Yeah.
So who else was on the crew? C.A. Henry must have been there.
I think Alan Henry was there, and we had yet to come across Clark Graff
Or Bob Gray.
or Bob Gray.
Right.
Clark wasn't there. I think it might have been just myself and
Killer.
Just you.
I can't confirm this because we'd have to ask Alan Henry.
Right.
But I'm pretty sure there was just the two of us, and then Clark was very quick to come into the picture, and then
think
the
so, too.
Zombats were born.
Yeah.
The
The
Zombats.
Zombats. Now, the Zombats was a name that was given to people that hung, people that helped with the band. It was a very nice distinction again.
Well, it was going to be the original name of the band, Goddo and the Zombats.
Gotto and the Zombats. I actually have in my archives. I have a rendering of how I envisioned it to be as a solo act with a curtain that came out, and there'd be like those little dolls with the things that, and that's how I would make my entrance. And I called it Goddo and the Zombats,
Right.
which I thought was pretty cool because it was like half zombie, half vampire bat,
Right.
Zombat, and it just sort of stuck for some reason.
Yeah.
And then, of course, on the Who Cares album, I had "This is a Zorro with Dalkas and the Zombats," and I did that by doing the helium thing.
Yeah.
But it's great when I hear it because people still remember that stupid word,
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I know in another episode, I'm not the producer of the show, nor am I the regular host, but Greg should have Lorne on, and you guys can get into everything that, all the people that worked for you. You were like a crew roadie university, and the things that all those guys went on to do it's unbelievable.
Well,
including Lorne's resume.
yeah, and we must add that. I always felt that how Ronnie Hawkins was like the mentor for all the great musicians. I thought I was the Ronnie Hawkins of crew guys.
Yeah, all the
Because
crews going on.
I think it was at my 60th birthday party, Bill St. Amour shows up. I said, "What are you doing these days?" "I work for Paul McCartney."
Sure.
Lorne's working for Neil Peart and Rush. Somebody else was working for Springsteen. I thought, Jesus Christ, I'm like a roadie university.
Ed Tor, Tina Turner.
Yeah, that's right.
Huge stuff. Okay, so the band's going along, and what happened? Because you ended up not doing the first record.
No, about 18 months, 2 years into it, I had a child with my first wife. This is back in 1975. And as anybody who has a child knows, after a while, it becomes very hard to keep that rock and roll lifestyle and also, just the money and finally, it was just getting too much for me to try and balance both, and so I decided I had to leave. And so Greg, I'm not quite sure how you found Doug. Or if
Billy Wade found him.
Billy
Okay.
Wade from Brutus.
That's right.
No, Billy Wade from Moxie.
Moxie,
The
that's
heaviest.
right.
The heaviest.
Heaviest.
That's right.
And that bass drum was like,
Yep.
yeah,
Okay, so this
Which
is
in
the
turn, so did Doug.
that's right. Doug had the big.
yeah, I had
bass
the big
drum.
bass
had
drum.
the
So
big
this
28
is the question that I got a lot this past week because I talked to a lot of your fans, friends of ours, and they said, "How did Doug get in the band?" Because we knew that Doug was from Ottawa. So
was
if
in
you could,
Powerhouse.
if you can pull us into that,
Well, we wanted Billy Wade. He was the one
and
that
Billy Wade, just for those viewers,
was a drummer in Moxie. He would have been on the first album, I think. Eh?
yeah,
And he was also Brutus.
Well, oh, okay. So that makes sense.
there you go.
But he didn't want to leave the gig that he had.
Sure.
So he suggests, he says, I know this guy from Ottawa named Doug Inglis, and he's a really good heavy drummer. And then we met him, and
He looks like Paul McCartney.
Well, he
he sent us Paul McCartney.
yeah, he did, but he also looked exactly like Marty.
Yeah.
So when
Yes.
Marty left the band, we still had about a couple hundred publicity photos left, and Doug would just sign Marty's face.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we'll put a picture up to show you exactly like then and now that they look exactly. I mean, you've got a twin brother
I
that
have a
looks
twin
nothing
brother.
like you.
Yeah,
and then here's
Doug
this
looks
guy.
more like my twin brother than my actual twin brother. Yeah,
And it really gets spaghetti because our twin brother, your twin brother,
Yes.
Mike, worked with Gotto on the crew for years.
yeah.
It was an
yes, there was a
incestuous
lot
sort
of-
of riff going down.
yeah.
So
But
there's a
anyway, when Doug finally left the band and Marty came back, now he has to sign Doug's picture.
lot-
So
right. So just so I get this straight, what year was the first record? Do we have that? 1976?
well, we would have recorded in '76 down in
77?
but we saw some pictures that Lorne brought in tonight from Thunder Sound.
Yeah.
Which
I remember
we'll
that session.
put those up as
Okay.
probably right now is the way we usually do it. They'll be up there right now covering my face,
Yeah.
which is not a bad thing. And there's pictures of us recording those demos that we did, which was
Yeah.
a couple songs you wrote, "Dead of Night." There was the jukebox.
Already a Memory.
Already a Memory was one of your good ones.
So when Doug joined the band, just explain to me a little bit more because I'm a total Gotto nerd. Did he move from Ottawa? Was he
Yeah.
living in Ottawa?
Yep, and he moved to Toronto.
And you know, I got to tell you, just at this point, when he moved to Toronto, he happened to, and it was just a coincidence, he moved just around the corner from where I was living. He was living on Sackville Street in a rooming house. And so I think the very first day he arrived in Toronto, you know, we got together because he was about 100 yards away. And it was funny, you know, because I felt a little odd, you know, because this is the guy that was going to be replacing me. And I thought he would be kind of adversarial, but he was just the nicest guy, like right off the bat, you know, like he was very humble. And I got together with him to tell him basically he didn't have to learn all my parts, that he could, you know, put in his own input in there and stuff. But anyway, he just turned out to be a lovely guy right from the very beginning.
The other thing was, I remember that someone had told me, I don't think it was Doug, but he said, well, he not only plays drums and looks great, but he could sing.
Yeah.
And he wasn't you. Let's put it this
Well,
way.
he wasn't, no.
Because we used to do all the harmonies together and
Right.
sing unisons because we weren't lead vocalists.
Yeah.
Right.
But Doug had his time. I mean, he could add little bits in the back, but basically it was the heavy-handed because he was
Yeah.
a way different drummer than
Oh,
Marty was.
completely different,
Marty was
yeah.
like Mitch Mitchell, where Doug was like Bonham, right?
Yeah.
more that
Good,
way.
good
He had
analogy.
incredibly
right there.
fast hands. I remember that. Like his fills were so fast.
Okay, so let's pick up on that because I got a lot of questions from friends of mine about the recordings, if we can. So now Doug's in the band, and somebody wrote the relationship between Doug and Marty rare, never contentious or competitive. There was love, respect, and balance, rarely seen in the scenario they were both in.
Yeah.
So I thought that was somebody sent me that.
That's lovely.
So now he's in the band, and you're talking about all the parts and the way Doug played. And for me, there's another guy who said it. Nobody played like Doug. He had a style that was so unique. Lorne, you could speak to that with all the drummers that you had worked with. But in the studio, Greg, how much of that stuff that we know did Doug contribute as the drummer? Like, was it always different? Did you say to him, like, I want you to go, bra-ba-boom,
Okay,
bra-ba-doo,
okay,
bra-ba-doo-ba-doo?
sometimes, but not often. But that's a really good point that you bring up. People that know the beginning of Under My Hat, that was him. Marty came up with that. He says, I said, I've written this rock song. And he goes, it's not a rock song. It's a salsa. Isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
You know,
It's
and
like
I
a
said,
bossa
what's a
nova.
salsa? I didn't know.
Bossa nova.
Bossa nova?
Yeah, it's
That's a
bossa
bossa
nova.
nova beat. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, but anyway, but it worked, and Doug just played it because it worked, you know.
As
That's
an
what made
example.
that song, you know.
So Lauren, you worked with Doug as well, though. At that point, you stayed on.
Yeah.
And what did you see? Did you see the difference? Did you see like different kits and? I guess the
different
band.
kits
The
right
Molson
away.
kit.
Larger drums,
Yeah.
Heavier hitter.
heavier hitter, but you know, very Ringo-ish.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, one of these.
Yeah,
you know,
he did have a-
He had his own style, you know, compared to what Marty was.
Yeah.
And that big giant bass drum. I used to love that.
Yeah, it was I think if I remember right, it was a 28-inch bass.
28
drum.
Yeah.
inch.
It wasn't a 26; it was a 28.
And he always went for the bell.
And he
Go
had
for the bell.
the ride cymbal right in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just cooking.
And smaller, you know, I think it was a 12-inch rack tom and 14 and 16 or 16 and 18
Yeah.
floor toms, a few cymbals, but he didn't need a lot to play.
No.
And he
He was like an English drummer.
you know, he showed up to play every night.
Yeah, you remind me of those
Yeah,
English
very,
blues
very
drummers.
much.
He
yeah.
loved Charlie Watts.
But but it was a mix of, to my eyes, was a mix of kind of Charlie Ringo kind of thing,
Yeah.
but a lot heavier.
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
right.
he had the you know, I don't want to say the bottom thing, but I could see very musical,
Yeah.
of course, and he hit harder.
Right.
He
right,
certainly
right.
did. He had a snap.
And you had to with that band because we were the loudest band on
Absolutely.
the scene in those
Yeah.
days.
Well, that.
And to get the mix up, you know, with screaming guitar amps right in your ears, and trying to get drums over that, over an Ampeg, and what was Gino playing?
Marshall, probably.
No, he had
Ampegs
Ampeg.
as
He used
well.
Did he
Ampegs.
Ampegs too?
Yeah.
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 I hated those things.
So
they couldn't break them up.
It was tough, but
Sounds were great.
and plus he was a good human too, you know. So
Well, yeah, that's the
enjoyed
thing.
Doug a
So
lot.
I had full disclosure. I'm looking at my notes here. So why do you think so many people love the guy? Because you know people had opinions of you. No, they did. And
We
you
all
know
did.
that, right? And no, and they were more extreme. And Gino was always a little bit more of a mystery. You know, like not a lot of people got into Gino. Like,
Doug was Switzerland, man.
there you go.
You know,
There you go.
Yeah.
I was the guy that was out front causing the trouble, you know, in many ways back in those days as a, you know, it's a tireless self-promoter. I mean, of course I made a lot of enemies being big mouth and arrogant or whatever was perceived.
Yeah.
I had a game plan in mind, you know. Gino was, you know, laid back. Doug he was under the radar, man.
Right.
He says, okay, well, you know, Greg will cause all the trouble. And
Yeah.
like,
Well,
I don't have to take the flack for it, you know.
To your credit, it's the Winston Churchill quote, right? Show me a man who doesn't have any enemies, I'll show you a man who hasn't done anything. So you were out there swinging for the fences.
Well, it was, I wouldn't say it was contrived, but I knew that the only way we were going to get anywhere was to have a persona like the way the Stones did, or,
Yeah.
you know, that was not such a, because when I was in Flood, that was like a Beatle band. I wanted Gotto to be, you know, the
Yeah.
Stones band. you
Yeah,
know?
the blues, a lot more hard hitting. And
But
Doug was
Doug was just a soft-spoken guy. Intellectually, I enjoyed his company a lot because, you know, he was well-read.
he was well read.
Yeah. And
Also, he was very
traveled.
even.
Yeah.
Very even.
He was really even.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I'm talking about emotionally. Like the guy,
That's
very.
what I
I
noticed
don't recall him ever
immediately.
really getting upset, like really upset. And at the same time, you know, even at the biggest gigs, it was like, you know, like this is what I'm going to do, you know.
Yeah.
So he was very, very even, and it was, and for the longest time, it was somebody that you could really depend on, you know, like he was right on there, you know, and yeah, he was just, and mostly, it's like a few other musicians that I know. He was, firstly, a really nice guy.
Right,
He was
right.
such an easy hang, and I played with him in a lot of different bands, not just with Greg, but I worked with him in Classic Albums Live and a few others. And then when I formed my own band, he was the first guy I called. I said, because I could communicate with him, and I knew that, you know, we could do something together.
Well, that's hilarious because they're both drummers, and you
Right.
guys were in bands together.
Well, yeah.
For years.
Well,
It-
yeah,
it
because
just
I went
worked
from
out.
drums and I started playing percussion. So for it seems like 1,000 gigs, Doug would be on drums and I'd be right beside him with the conga drums and the tambourines and the, you know, all the cowbells and all that kind of stuff. And you know, also I was there to do a lot of singing. That was kind of my primary thing.
Yeah.
But he was always easy to hang with. He really was, and we spent a lot of time on the road together. We roomed together a lot, and
Absolutely. So, Greg, I'll put you on the spot here. In the studio, can you remember some times when he just made the song? Can you remember a scenario? Like, for me, I listed the ones like Drop Dead, That's Who. Just the way he took that. Same with Cock On. Like the 16th. Like, I'm really getting nerdy here.
I'm not going to take any credit for that. There would have been times as the producer I would have said,
Sure.
why don't we try something like this? In fact, there's one song, and I wish it would jump out at me from Who Cares, where I actually sat at the drums, and I cannot play the drums. I'm the first to admit it.
Right.
But I showed him this thing that I had in mind.
Cool.
And he did it, and it ended up in the track.
Yeah,
but I was just like going, it's something like this.
Yeah, and he would
and then he finessed it, and then we used it. But, outside of the fact that Marty came up with some of the early grooves, like Drive Me Crazy, and then Under My Hat, of course, and the ones that Marty played on, before we recorded them with Doug.
Right.
But I'm going to give him his head on that one, man, because, the reason he was in the band is because he was like as good as Gino was and what I brought to the party. Doug and I formed a very solid, simple foundation for the guitar to do all the histrionics. So I lost all my bass playing technique in Gotto. Before I used to play started with my thumb, then I played with my fingers, then I went over and I was a fluid bass player, and all I played for 40 years was doom 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 doom. I lost all my technique.
Yeah, but
Gotto.
but you know what? I love that stuff because it's the same with other bands like AC/DC and stuff. It's not about. It's about how solid the groove is. Like, you've got to be right. You can only just play one note, dum, 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 dum. But if you're right in the pocket, it works.
Well, it's a little known fact, but Getty took his entire playing style from me.
And it shows.
And it
shows. Now, Lorne's worked with Geddy Lee, so that's why he's...
That's like an in joke, folks.
Yeah, that's
an in joke.
Yes, absolutely. So live, let's talk about live. All the live shows, because I've hammered you on the studio stuff. So Doug had his... When we would go out and see the band, or I'd be working with the band in some capacity, running around, being a Shreve, Doug would have his people that were like big fans of his, that just spoke to him, that kind of thing. So was he always giving to the fans? He spoke to people after the shows? He was accessible?
From what I've been reading, the little testimonials that people have been writing the past week, is that to a man or woman, they said he always had time to chat and and talk to us after without any air of pretense. I mean, I think we were all like that. I mean, I had a reputation for things with people in the business, but I don't think there's many of the fans out there. All three of us were like that. We were accessible to the people that were paying our bills.
Right. So, Lorne, when you were on the road, and I am trying to hold back on everything that Lorne has done, but with Journey or with Rush or with Van Halen, did you always think of Gotto? Like at home, and I always see you on Facebook making little references, calling Doug Sluggo, and that kind of thing, which is great. That's some deep stuff, and you go back. So you must have jumped when somebody said Gotto when you were on the road, and people would, because there was always references to it.
Well, that was a big step to starting my career. Before that, all I had done is help load, dance bands into Vanier High School for the dances.
How old were you back then? You're talking like 19?
Well, I was in the same smoking area as Dave Bendeth. So that just gives you an idea.
Look at you. But you were born in Sarnia, no?
Yeah, I was born in Sarnia, and then moved to Toronto at 14 years old.
Oh, okay.
And then immediately went into George Vanier High School, which is, we had a coffee house and bands like Rush with John Rutsey would play.
Wow, with John Rutsey, sure.
So I volunteered to help these bands coming in and out. Lee Ashford, I think Steel River was one of the bands. Rush would play the coffee house and play the gymnasium every once a year or whatever. So that was my start, but my first start actually working with a band, going in every day,
getting paid,
was Gotto.
Wow. Did you do the gig at Massey Hall with us when we did Golden Earring?
Yeah.
You were there with us, yeah.
Yeah.
Because
So
that was the first. I mean, we'd only been
fact,
together
that
for.
might have been my first gig,
Really?
possibly.
Because we I'm not sure because that happened very early. It was just a couple of weeks after we had done our first show, and then I think that was like our third or
And I
fourth show.
think that might have been my first show.
Greg,
that was
can
a
you
good one.
can you just tell the viewers, just because we're here about Doug, but I think that's a great precursor. Could you just tell them about that gig? Because it was Golden Earring.
We were rehearsing in the house that Marty had down at
Cabbage
Cabbagetown.
Yeah.
With the most treacherous stairwell. It went like this, you know, I mean, you didn't even want to walk down.
in a
I mean,
boat.
it was awful. And Pat Ryan, our the head of our crew at the time, road manager, I don't know what else Pat did, but he came down and said, "I got you a gig. You're going to open up for Golden Earring at Massey Hall." And I think we were learning under my hat at that
Might have been, yeah.
session that night. So like a month later, we're on stage opening for Golden Earring.
Yeah.
And nobody knew us from Adam. I mean, but the next day in the newspapers, all they talked about was us.
Yeah.
And I was up at Yonge and St. Clair to go to a movie with my girlfriend at the time, and we listened to the 6 o'clock rock report, and all they talked about was his songs. And I'm sitting there going, hey, and then I realized that this is going to be good because we have another strong songwriter in the band. Yeah. But that night, Larry Wilson was talking. He says, the drummer, had these songs, and I think he might have mentioned already a memory by name. But it was incredible. I mean,
Right.
we come on as a really green band. At that time, the Gasworks wouldn't give us a gig.
Wow.
Yeah.
But after that, within a few weeks, I think, we played a week.
We're almost like a house band.
And it was lined up on Monday night.
Yeah.
It was just the word got out so fast,
Right. So with Doug on the road and in the van, always congenial, as far as I can remember.
He drove a lot, didn't he?
He drove a lot, yeah. Because none of us. I mean, I didn't start driving till I was in my 40s.
Yeah, nobody would drive with Gino.
And nobody wanted Gino to drive for obvious reasons.
I had to drive with him once.
No,
But Doug
I mean,
was the guy. Yeah, he would drive a lot, wouldn't he? The band van, anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this is before a lot of the overindulgence with all of us started happening.
Right.
You
When
know,
you had drivers.
Because we couldn't afford it back then. We couldn't afford drugs and things,
Yeah.
Just the kindness of strangers,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Giving us.
giving us things as presents, so to speak.
Can you? Sorry, what were you going to say?
No.
Can you touch a little bit on Doug, Greg, and Gino, as we know you all, in Texas, in the States, with Doug? Do you remember going down there? And yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, first of all, it was the first time that I think I grew a full beard, if you can imagine. And I had long hair, and they were braided. I had it done in Jamaica or someplace. And Doug had this big, because he was hairy. I
Yeah,
mean, he
he
looked like
was
the
hairy.
missing link. you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, he was.
His
hairy.
feet were hairy.
Like I said, he had hair where monkeys don't have hair.
He had hair on top of hair.
Yeah, Doug was a
He
hairy
was
guy.
hairy. Yeah.
He was.
Hair suit.
Hairy high and hairy low.
There's a great picture that was put on Facebook of him shaving with Kyle.
Yeah.
That was a great picture of him.
Oh man, I never seen anybody so hairy.
So you all grew beards. And
It's
you
like
went
we had
to
the missing link on drums.
Yeah. So you went to the States.
Yeah, and so Gino had a big Zapata mustache, and I had a beard and wore a Harley T-shirt. It's the only time I can ever recall being on tour where we didn't get hassled in truck stops.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, we're just sissies,
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
just sissies with beards. But
a lot of Canadian bands used to go down to Texas.
He was always
Yeah.
Toronto, Texas.
Yeah.
Toronto,
Yeah.
Texas.
Well, Lee Ashford
Maybe
was
a
huge
gas
there.
stop
Yeah.
somewhere in St. Louis or
Yeah, but
something.
there was
like
a
that.
whole network of places.
we
to play
we
there.
terrorized we started at Harpo's in Detroit, and then we ended up at some place in Chicago. We made enemies all the way down the eastern seaboard. Yeah, until we got to Texas, and they put us on the Cardi's chain, which was a big chain of like super huge clubs. We opened for the Grassroots.
Oh, I remember that.
So I can't remember their hit, but they're like a lightweight.
They had a few.
Yeah,
Yeah, they had a few.
They
Back
did,
in the
but
60s.
But they were like all of the people coming to see them were people that look like us now.
Yeah.
So it was like the gray haired, the blue hairs there. And then Gotto comes out at the height of our lunacy, just giving it. And people are going, what?
Yeah.
We're
like
from
when
Canada. We'll go back to Canada.
When
we don't
Hendrix
want
opened
you.
for the Monkeys.
Yeah.
So it was like one of the worst mismatches ever,
Right.
But we were in the States, and it was fun to, I mean, especially Doug and I, we would go to the historical places. Like I was a big museum guy, and Doug, I said, Doug, we're in San Antonio. Let's go to the Alamo, man.
Yeah.
I don't recall Cheeto ever coming with us.
was it going to be
He
funny?
was sleeping, I think.
Yeah.
But we went down there. I think we went twice, and then I think Bluestein got the word about me. He said, "Don't ever send that guy down to America again." Okay.
Oh wow.
Because we were pretty out of control by that time.
Yeah. That was a you were peaking in a lot of ways at that point.
Yeah, peaking is exactly the right word.
Yeah.
We were completely. We could have gone to America the way Rush did it, and legged it out and did the tour after tour after
Sure.
tour. But we didn't have that gene that said, by acting the way you guys are acting, no one's going to dig it.
Yeah.
We weren't the gentlemen at that point. We were like a gang.
Yeah. No. It was,
We sort of shot. I still have a big hole in my foot from shooting it so many times.
can we talk about your T-shirt, Marty?
This is kind of cool. This is the original Gotto T-shirt. This goes back. This is almost 40 pounds ago, and it's. Anyway, this is the original shirt. We got it designed by a company called 50 Fingers. It was a company led by some people I knew, Peter Francie and Clark Spencer, and they had an art design company. And so we asked them to come up with a logo, and Greg had the idea for this,
The rock thing.
the kind of Ben-Hur thing.
I always thought that was a C.A. Henry riff because he
No,
did, he
it's
did
before
that
him.
backdrop, right?
He did the backdrop.
Yeah,
He got
But the backdrop had
printed.
the same. But that was also the
But
logo that we used on
that
the album.
backdrop came from that.
Yeah, and this
Ah.
logo was, they charged us big time for the logo. Like they said, this is your logo, and I think we paid like $600
They
for
may
it or
have.
something.
Are you sure they didn't print that backdrop that we had?
No,
Or what?
that I don't
Alan
know.
painted that.
But I got this original
that? He
T-shirt.
painted that.
and I got this one
I didn't
too.
make that
Doug,
show.
you know what? Doug
Here
had
you
it
go.
in his garage.
What's this one? It's the
Fab 3.
Return of the Fab
Return
3.
of the Fab 3. On the back, it's got Gotto with the signatures on there. And I think I could get a few $1,000s for this.
Yes. Now, Greg,
I'll give you a $5. Actually got this as a poster. Some kind fellow, Chris Doda, I think his name is. He sent me a poster of this, which arrived last Friday. And 10 minutes, I opened it up and I saw the poster and I thought, oh, geez, I don't have this in my archives. This is great. And then 10 minutes later, I got a message through, I think, email message saying that Doug was gone.
wow.
And I thought that was like just such a weird coincidence. you
And
know?
the significance is, if you don't know, is Greg is not modeling. He doesn't look in the mirror often. He doesn't listen to his records, and you don't look at a lot of the pictures. And to get that is pretty poetic.
Well,
10 minutes before you get
it was
the
a very
news.
strange thing. And it's funny, you speak about, was it last night or the night before I actually spent the whole evening? Because I don't think this thing is really filtered in yet, that
Sure.
I'm never going to see Doug again.
Yeah.
So I watched the 35th anniversary concert.
Oh, wow.
And instead of, watching myself for 2 hours, I actually watched every time Doug was up there, I watched him. And then just realized what a really great, like he looked effortless.
He did.
It was like he had that swing to him, but man, he was hitting those things, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. He had
So
a
I watched
snap.
him and then I listened to a bunch of our records and I had a good cry. I got it out of me,
Right.
But,
right.
yeah, well, that's all I'm going to say. about
No, that's great, and the 35th anniversary is a great piece that you guys captured, which I think a lot of us were happy about. Marty, if you don't mind, this is Greg's show, and we're talking a lot about Gotto and Lorne with Gotto. But can you talk a little bit about all the bands that you played in and that Doug worked with?
Yeah, it was funny because obviously,
If that's cool.
Because what happened after I left the band, I started performing with Greg again, with Doug on drums, and I would sing and play percussion and stuff like that. But then I started doing playing other bands that Doug was getting involved in. I do recall one time I did a show with Gotto, and Doug came up to me and said, "Oh, somebody has asked me to play drums on the Beatles' White Album. They're going to do the whole album, like back, each song." And I said, really? I said, that sounds great. Who's playing percussion? And somebody said, or Doug said, there's percussion on a Beatles song, And I said, well, yeah, every song has got percussion. So anyway, we started working together in Classic Albums Live, and we did that together for almost 10 years. And for people who don't know, that was a group of musicians that would perform classic rock albums. Yeah. So it allowed me to hear Doug play outside of Gotto. We were doing a lot of Beatles songs together, a lot of Beatle music together. Yeah. We were doing Stone stuff together. We were doing all kinds of different bands. And he was showing me like how he could change his style. And it was wonderful. It really was. And then I started playing in a few other bands that Doug was playing in, and the Blushing Brides was a Rolling Stones touring band, a clone band, a tribute band, I should say, and he played with them for a number of years. And again, we used to play together. And then I started my own group. I love the music of Tom Waits, and so I decided to start a band playing nothing but Tom Waits. And I asked Doug to play in that as well. So again, we were able to explore all kinds of different music together, and it was wonderful to see how he could change gears. Like he could play. Like I remember one time I saw him play. He did a Who show. He was playing Who's Next with Classic Albums Live.
Doug was.
Yeah, Doug was on.
Doing
King
Moon,
and he was great.
Crazy.
It was like they unleashed him. It was unbelievable. Because
Cool.
normally we'd had this other drummer that would do it, but then Doug came in and said, "Yeah, I'll do it," and it was just great. Like he just suddenly. There was the Doug I knew, He was just going nuts.
You just reminded me of something that I'd forgotten about for years. I got the job a number of years back to be Ronnie Hawkins' band leader.
I remember that.
And I said, let me put a band together. People still want to see you out there. And he said, yeah, all right. And the first guy I called was Doug.
Oh, yeah.
And when we started rehearsing, I remember Hawkins took me outside of the barn one day. And he says, that boy that you brought in here, he's the second best drummer I ever had since Levon.
Levon Helm.
And I told Doug that.
Big words there.
Right?
Boy.
Right.
So big words.
We played, I got invited to one of Ronnie's dues at Massey Hall. I'd left the band by that time. And Doug was playing. He stayed with Hawkins.
Well, that was the tribute to Ronnie Hawkins.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And Levon was standing next to me. And I said, Levon, that's my drummer out there. I said, I know he'd be just thrilled if you'd come out, and I'd be thrilled if he'd come out and Sidney goes, well, he says, I'm on next, and I don't want to upset the apple cart,
Wow.
And then after I did mine, then Levon did go out, and I saw this great picture, which I hope we can find.
Yeah,
it's probably right there, right now.
Yeah.
And it's Doug and Levon playing together. And I know how
I've
much
seen that photo.
much
Is
that
that
would have
right?
meant to him,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Levon was Doug's favorite drummer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he loved Ringo. Lawrence right. He loved Ringo. He loved Charlie Watts, but Levon was his guy.
Oh,
yeah. And you can hear that.
Well, he
can
had that
see the way
swing
he
in his
sits.
play that
Yeah.
Levon did.
Absolutely. And I have to throw my own hat in the ring here. We had a country act called the Diesel Cowboys, and we had Doug on drums for over a year doing it was a local house gig. And that material was totally, everything from Johnny Cash all the way up to the new guys.
He was a good musician.
Yeah, and Doug could do it. He did all the cross stick stuff.
Yeah.
So as fabulous as he was in Gotto, it was cool to see him do some different things. But he always came back to Gotto.
But
that was so
towards the end, the last gig that we did together, we didn't actually do together. He didn't want to play anymore.
No.
He just said, I don't. I said, Doug, we have a few gigs left on the
Right.
books. Let's go out with a bang this time. Let's we got a good. Gino's kid was playing with us, Gene, and Gordon McKinnon, who we went to school with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he didn't want to do it.
No, his heart wasn't into
He
it.
just he'd lost. Even after all the great stuff that he'd done in his career,
Right.
And listening to this, I could see how he really became a journeyman.
Yeah.
All around drum guy. Because I never knew he could do that Keith Moon stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, did he pull it off?
I don't.
I know it was
no,
me.
I would
he
have loved
did.
to
He
have seen
really
it.
did. Matter of fact, somebody posted that on a memorial. Like this guitar player I work with, Rob Phillips, and he was talking about that. He said, he said most of the times I played Beatles stuff with Doug, but he said this one time he got hired to do the Keith Moon stuff, and he said it was like, what a pleasant surprise. It was like, wow, he can really well there. So-
I'll always remember there's one special part of the show when we did Under My Hat, Doug would do like a roll and fills and stuff. He never hit the one. I
No.
mean, never, ever. And I would turn around and go, that close.
Almost.
He'd come in at like 1.5 or 2 or something.
yeah.
But he never came. So Gino and I would look at each other and go, where are we? You know, like,
Yeah.
he would be doing boom, boom. And it sounded pretty good, you know.
Yeah.
It must have looked nice.
Yeah.
And then, but he would come in and then it would be like off time.
That was the
That
sound.
was the
though.
Charlie part of it.
That was the Charlie.
That was the Charlie part of it. But well, within Gotto, you guys would have those. I alluded to it when before this taping, you were playing me some songs, and like in Bus Driver Blues, which that's an ironic song to bring up at this point. But the way you guys would grind through, like you wouldn't be on the one. It would always be a little bit behind. Again, we're getting a little technical here, but that was Doug's style. It was always so cool the way
You
he
know,
sat back a bit.
It's funny you mentioned that he was a journeyman because Doug really was at the end. He would play with anybody, and it was really funny because Doug just wanted to play. And I remember somebody came into the room and said, "Look, I got a gig on Sunday, but it's a real shit gig, you know, and it's you don't want to do it." And Doug goes, "Well, what's the money like?" You know, like can't be that shitty. Like I'll do it. You know, like he would just do it.
Yeah.
Like he would take any gig, and he just loved to play. But like you said at the end, he didn't want to play anymore.
It was like a different guy. All
Yeah,
of a
even
sudden.
in my own band, in my own Tom Waits
Yeah.
band, after a while, he just suddenly just lost that drive to get out there and play.
His heart wasn't in it.
No, it wasn't.
You know, it really, you're right. You're right.
I've known other drummers that have gone through the same thing.
Really,
Yeah.
eh?
Just all of a sudden. Well,
Yeah.
my guy.
Well, it's
that I
very
worked
physical.
with, he gave him a number of dates that he was going to do, and that was going to be it for him.
Really, he
Plus,
knew ahead of time.
You know, the other thing too,
I know
they're
what you're
just
talking about.
It
yeah.
wasn't done after the fact. It was done. We were working up to a date.
Right, and you knew that's what was
That
going to
was
be
it.
it. Yeah.
And
Gone.
something
Gone.
that just entered my head is the fact that, you know, we went from doing it ourselves to having good crew guys. We always had great crew guys coming around.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you're back to the way it was for Doug, where it was loading all of your own gear in your car
Full
and
circle.
lugging it in 20 times and 20 times out. I don't think he'd gotten spoiled. I mean, like we all did. We all had.
Well-
I had a guy doing my
Well,
guitars.
you know, the drummer's the goalie of the rock world. You know.
Why don't we do this, Lauren? Do you want not any final words, but maybe a small memory that you maybe are sitting on about Doug, and I'll ask you the same question, Marty, and finish with Greg.
Well, like we spoke before, this was a launch pad for me, getting into the industry, whether it be drum tech or whether it be mixing the sound or whatever. I was there to do anything we were going to do. So, but I remember the switch. I can't remember exactly the day that this went down. You know, I know that there was a few days, and then Doug came into the picture. And,
Remember the
and,
Piccadilly Tube was the first gig, I think.
with Doug.
Yeah, I think so.
That
And I went to
sounds-
see it.
because we did that so often. In fact, we were doing that when we went to record the record because we would play the Piccadilly Tube. We'd load out after the Saturday night and drive straight to Montreal. Load into the studio, work all day, and then I think we would only do one day there, wouldn't we? Or
we
what,
did a couple because there
couple
was a
days?
building that was
It
on
felt like
fire
one day.
next to us.
It felt like one
You
day.
stayed awake for.
So and then we'd come back and we'd go straight to a high school for a show, or up to the Blackhawk, or to
Yeah.
wherever.
Yeah,
And so it was kind of a fog, somewhat
a
whirlwind fog. But I remember him coming in, and the first thing I noticed, you know, he's a good-looking guy.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, well, he looks like me.
He looked exactly like you. Good-looking guy. But just, you know, it was time for me to figure out how do you know, first of all, where are your drums? What are they? And this and that. And then when we finally got a hold of him, he was just so easy to deal with. And,
Nice.
And you know, not the least bit judgmental or difficult to deal with, or, you know, back then that was me not being the drum tech that I am nowadays.
Right.
So I learned so much from Marty and Doug
way back, yeah.
that
great.
there was a lot of things that helped me go further because of these two guys.
Well, that's
And
very nice of you. to
This
say.
guy as well.
Absolutely.
Because I wouldn't be here without him. To be
Thanks,
honest
Lord.
with you.
No, it's a true story. No,
So,
that's
and
the
I
truth.
just, after that, I was just fortunate to be able to fall into holes that made sense
Yeah.
moving forward. And yeah, I'm grateful.
Incredible. Well, that's very
Very
nice, and
grateful.
thanks for coming tonight to share some time you did with Doug.
My pleasure.
Yeah, no, it was
pleasure.
great.
It's been
And
fun.
Marty, what are some thoughts you have? Your
Oh,
closing
Jesus.
thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. I was calling Doug my rhythm twin, you know, because he looked more like me than my twin brother, and we did so many gigs together, so many gigs, and he was, I think, in the end, really, he was just a friend, like he really was. And the last couple of years, we didn't get to play together as much as we would have liked, but we stayed in touch. He called me, I would call him, you know, and yeah, I'm gonna miss Doug. He was always a very friendly, easygoing guy, and like it's like anything else in your life. When you spend that much time with somebody, you know, you get an overview of what they were like. And he was just a real gentleman. He really was. He was a great musician, great friend, great gentleman. He really was.
That's great. Well, I want Greg to have the last word, so I'll just say a quick, very, very quick story. Gotto was just hotter than hell and playing at the Elmo Combo. And it was a sound check day, and I was sound checking the drums and setting up the drums and just helping out. I wasn't anything official, but I was in like Flint, and there was a gap, and Doug says, "Hey, come, we'll go get a sandwich downstairs." Now, I'm 14 years old, and I just remember this day, how good Doug looked, and he smelt good.
Yeah.
And it was the weirdest thing. Like, he took me to this place to get a pastrami sandwich, you know, and he says, "No, I got it." Like, I never had anybody buy me. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I was still a kid, so I didn't know that. You know, of course he would have bought it for me, but at the time I was so impressed with that. And I even remember his hands. He had really well manicured hands, which I'm getting a bit deep here, but it was a memory that I never.
He looked
remember.
like a rock star.
He
man.
did.
The first
Yes.
time I looked like he
He
walked
did.
in,
He did.
and I went.
Yeah,
You know, you look like
yeah.
you belong in
McCartney.
a rock star, man.
Yeah, he really
You're-
did.
You're a rock star.
And you'll laugh at this. All my kit when I was a drummer, when I was a kid, were all cracked cymbals because they're all Doug's old cymbals. And he used to give me all his old cracked cymbals,
Yeah.
but they were fine for us.
Yeah.
They were great.
of course
But
they are.
Greg, absolutely, this is your show, and we're all here because of you. I don't mean to be too modeling, but it's absolutely the truth.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you, Rob Tyler, for doing a great. By the way, he has a band called a two-piece band called Two for the Show. If you ever want to die laughing, this is the band to go see.
Thank you.
Boy, this is a tough one. I mean, I can't recall a lot of times that Doug and I crossed swords. We had a few. There's no doubt about it. But you know, the guy was with me for on and off 40 plus years.
Yeah, 45 years.
And we made a lot of great music together. And it's a shame that things didn't turn out the way that we wanted them to. And I'm really sorry that it didn't turn out for Doug the way that he wanted to. But I really hope that he's found some peace at last. And I hope he's okay, you know, because I guess towards the end his health wasn't that good. And I'm sad that he's gone. But I'm really happy that I knew him.
Yeah.
So thanks for watching tonight. God bless you, Doug. Travel safe, brother.
Yeah, see you on the other side.
And we'll be
bless
back
Doug.
with another Rock Talk next Saturday night. Thanks for watching.
brother, what's driving you mad? Have you got the answer? I keep it under my hat. It's working frustration. Get it off your chest. There's no motivation.